Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. Everything in this video is for educational purposes only. Do not use these techniques on real websites, networks, apps, accounts, or devices unless you have explicit written permission. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Right, welcome back to another video. This video is going to be me trying to teach something and learn something cybersecurity related. So this is the first one like this. Please bear with me. Labs are coming. The next video is already in progress and that will be uploaded tomorrow. But today is just an introduction to a topic called SQL injection. So as a web developer, I've heard about SQL injection lots of times before. It's one of those vulnerabilities that seems to have been around forever. I vaguely remember dealing with SQL injection protection years ago when I was working with PHP and MySQL. But modern SQL injection, how is that tested? How do attackers use it? How do defenders spot it? I've got no clue. So this video is really me starting again from the beginning and trying to explain it to you so I get it solid in my head. So what is SQL injection? From what I understand so far, SQL injection is a vulnerability that lets an attacker interfere with the database queries that an application sends to its backend. So instead of the application asking the database a safe, expected question, an attacker may be able to change that question. That could let them see information they're not supposed to see. It could expose hidden records, user data, personal information, or other stuff. In a more serious case, SQL injection can be used to change how the application even behaves. It can be used to modify data, bypass checks, or help an attacker maintain access over time through a backdoor. So it's not just a weird database trick. It can become a serious security issue. So what does it matter? Well, the goal of an SQL injection attack is usually to gain unauthorized access to data. That could mean usernames, passwords, email addresses, credit card details, physical addresses, anything that the company holds on you. A lot of major breaches have involved SQL injection or similar issues where an application did not handle user input safely. And the fallout from that can be huge. So reputational damage, regulatory fines, loss of customer trust, and in some cases, long-term unauthorized access that goes unnoticed for ages. Lovely stuff. Really relaxing hobby I've picked here. Anyway, so how can it be detected? There are automated tools that can help with SQL injection testing, things like Burp scanner, AI tools that are coming out now. The basics can also be tested manually, and that's what we're going to be doing. So the idea is to check the application's entry points and see how it responds to different input. So those entry points might be URL parameters, search boxes, login forms, filters, cookies, request headers, or hidden form fields on the page. One of the classic things to test is with a single quote. If the application responds with an error or behaves strangely, that might suggest the input is being placed directly into an SQL query. Another approach is to use conditions that should evaluate to true or false. For example, or 1 equals 1, that's always true, or 1 equals 2, that's always false. So if the application behaves differently depending on which one you use, it can also be a clue that your input is affecting the database query. So there are also time delay payloads where you try to make the database pause before responding. If the response suddenly takes longer, that can suggest that the payload was actually executed. And then there is OST, or out-of-band application security testing. So that's where you try to make the application contact an external server that you control. If that happens and it gives you evidence that something executed on the back end, then you've got that sort of attack as well. So where can SQL injection happen? Most beginner examples show SQL injection happening in the where clause of a select statement. Now I need to explain a little bit there. SQL has its own sort of language that it uses. And that would look something like this. So this would be a select statement. So you can see how that's built up here. It kind of makes sense because it's easy to understand. So here, this will be saying, show me the products where the category is accessories. Or you could have this one here that says, show me a user where the username and password match. But SQL injection is not limited to that. It can also happen in update statements, insert statements, select statements, table names, column names, filters, and order by clauses. Basically, if user-controlled input is being placed unsafely into a database query, there may be a problem. So the common SQL injection techniques that I've seen mentioned so far include retrieving hidden information, subverting application logic, union attacks, and blind SQL injection. Retrieving hidden information is where you manipulate a query to return data that the application would normally hide. Subverting application logic means changing the query so the app behaves differently. For example, making a condition always true. Union attacks are used to retrieve information from other database tables. So a page that normally shows product data might be manipulated to return data from a different table, like user data. Blind SQL injection is where the results are not directly shown in the response. So instead of seeing the answer, you have to infer what happened from behavior, errors, delays, or external interactions. And that sounds like the kind of thing that would definitely melt my brain later. So at the moment, I'm using PortSwigger Web Security Academy to learn these things. I'm not sponsored or affiliated with them, #not sponsored. They just seem to have a fairly good set of safe legal labs for learning web security. That's the part that matters, legal. I'm not testing this on any real websites. I am not poking random applications on the internet, and I am using intentionally vulnerable labs designed for learning. So like that one or WebGoat. And that's exactly where this kind of practice belongs. So what have I learned so far about SQL injection? The biggest thing I've learned so far is that SQL injection is mainly about trust. If an application trusts user input too much and includes it directly in a database query, then the attacker may be able to change what that query does. As a developer, that's really interesting because it's not just a cybersecurity issue, it's also a software engineering issue. It comes from how applications are built and how input is handled, how database queries are written, and how much trust the system gives to data coming out of, and how much trust the system gives to data coming from the outside world. So in the next video, I'm going to work through some practical SQL injection labs and see how this works in a real vulnerable application, safely, legally, in a lab, like a responsible adult. Mostly. So if you want to come along for that ride, that'll be the next video, and that should be up tomorrow. So thank you very much for watching this one. If you liked it, hit the like button, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff, share, and yeah, until the next time for the next video, catch you later. Bye-bye.